Hello everyone, I'm NTom64.
And I'm FTA.
And welcome to the HellfireComms retrospective of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Basically, what we're going to do here, because we haven't done any Sonic colours in a while, we just want to refresh our Sonic commentary skills and whatnot. We're going to have a look back through our memories of playing Sonic games, go through each game that we've played in turn, and just offer like an up-to-date analysis of what we think of each game in turn.
Seems legit. So, why don't we start? So, Tom, what was the very first game you played in the franchise?
That would be Sonic 1 for the Master System, Gareth.
Okay, that's the same as Torch. See, mine was Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive. Which game would you like to start with?
Let's start with Sonic 1. We'll do Mega Drive and then we'll do Master System.
Okay. You start.
Fine. Now, I'm not as enamoured with the Mega Drive version as I am with the Master System version, for obvious reasons.
Sacrilege! Sorry.
I know, but let me explain. I don't know, maybe it's because it was like my first Sonic game, so I'm really biased, but I've always enjoyed the Master System version more than the Mega Drive one. I mean, you had to find the Chaos Emeralds in the levels. It had some unique levels like Bridge and Jungle. And I don't know, the platforming seemed different somehow to the Mega Drive version. Maybe because it was less technical and easier to get into, but I've always found it more fun to play than the Mega Drive version.
They still had Green Hill, and I believe there was a level called Scrap Brain in there. So it's more, well, some people like to theorize it's based on one of the earlier betas of the Mega Drive version, because it actually features, and I believe I read this on Retro a while ago. It actually features a Badnik, which was featured in like pictures of a pre-release version of Sonic 1. That then, of course, was cut out. Also, a lot of people like to think it is based on the original because the ending features animation of Sonic singing in a band, which was of course a feature of the original Mega Drive version.
Yes, and one of the characters in that band, if I recall correctly, was Vector the Crocodile.
Yes, Vector the Crocodile played keyboard.
And then he went and became a DJ, so yeah. That's all I really have to say about the Master System version, but there's loads to say about the Mega Drive one.
Yeah, well, of course, the Mega Drive version is pretty much the game that, started. If it wasn't for that game, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking.
And making sweet monies off the internet.
We wouldn't be making mad $6 a month off the internet if it wasn't for that game. I mean, like that's a game that I have to say I played that after I played 2. So, for the first time I played it, as a young noob, I was like, I can't spin dash. This game sucks. Where's the spin dash gone?
It is based a lot more around momentum than the second one would be. Than the second one is, I'd say.
Yeah. I would even say the first one is a lot more platform based. I mean, like levels like say Marble and Spring Yard, or maybe not so much Spring Yard, but something like Marble is much more about platforming than speed. I mean, in my opinion, 2's better than 1, but 2 has a lot more focus on just raw power and speed, which is something that obviously they improved upon that from the first one. But I think a lot of people do forget that. A lot of people like to say that Sonic is just hold right to win. LOL, this game is basic. But like a lot of the levels in the first game, you spend a lot of the time actually not going that fast.
It is very platform heavy. It's the least polished of the trilogy, I'd say, and that kind of makes sense because it's the first game. There's a lot of frustrating parts. Caterkillars come to mind. I find the special stages to be very twitchy. I was never very good at those, but
I hate them. I hate the special stages in 1, and that I think we can all admit that Masato Nakamura's soundtrack for 1 and 2 are fantastic. The one track I have never ever liked is his theme for the special stage in 1. I find it horrendously bad.
It's a lullaby, basically.
It's terrible. I mean, like of all the tracks they remixed for 4, they picked that one.
Level wise, pretty much perfect. The only one I would say kind of lets it down is probably gonna get a lot of flack for this. Labyrinth. Not a fan of Labyrinth.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Labyrinth Act 3 because that boss used to. I used to hate that boss. Like as a child, that was the one thing I could never do. Well, actually, I say that. It took me 3 days to complete one the first time playing it, but most of that was just trying to get past Labyrinth Act 3.
So gameplay wise, they laid down the foundation that would last for pretty much every classic 2D Sonic game. Music, damn near perfect. Aesthetically, it was quite nice. There was a lot of focus on industrial settings that I noticed. Like in the background of Spring Yard, there's a city.
Yeah, well, it's originally it was because the level order was originally different. It was supposed to be a natural progression from pure greenery to like industrial. Like Labyrinth was originally the second level, but it was deemed too hard, so they bumped it to fourth. Literally it would go from, I think it was like Green Hill to Labyrinth to Marble to Spring Yard to Starlight, and then
Yeah, I can. That would be a better order, I think.
yeah, well, they did that because again it was meant to be. Well, of course, like so, it has been said. Yuji Naka has said that the whole game was meant to be subtly, mind you, but it was meant to be a type of like kind of like greenery versus machine type battle, which is which I think something like say Sata in, if you watch say Sata M, it's a lot more prevalent in that show than it is in the games, but
Well, Sonic and Robotnik pretty much represent nature and machinery in turn.
which about that it is actually of that era of video games. Sonic the Hedgehog is quite unique in the fact that you have a human antagonist. Like the main boss is a human, and you're controlling basically a freak of nature. Because in most games at that point, it's the other way around.
Except for Mega Man.
Well, Mega Man's a robot who fights other robots.
Good point.
Yeah.
But he is blue.
He's blue. Yeah. Technically he's blue and cyan.
Let's not get into that. Brental Floss has ruined those songs for me, I swear to God.
That bastard.
I think that's all I have to say about Sonic 1, to be honest.
It's a classic game. It's not my favorite. Like, if I had to name my top 5 Sonic games, it probably wouldn't make the list. But obviously, it's a game that I think all of us fans, on a very high level, we have to respect and love it, because if the foundation for greatness wasn't in that game, the franchise wouldn't be here. If Sonic 1 wasn't a good game, Sonic would have gone the way of Bubsy and just died a horrific death.
Okay, Sonic 2, which version shall we start with?
Let's go with the Master System, because that was actually released first.
And that was the actual debut of Tails.
It was the first time he was seen in a game. Obviously, he's not playable in that game, but it was the first. I like Sonic 2 on the Master System. It's not. It's everyone says it that the hang gliders in Sky High are frustrating as hell.
Yeah.
It just I used to play that because my brother had a Master System and he had Sonic 1 and 2, and there was a level select code which every time he would let me play on his Master System, which wasn't often, I would bug him to do the code, because I could never get past, because Sky High is level 2 after Underground Zone. I could never get past it, so I was like, do it for me, and he'd do it. There's a lot of interesting stuff in it. It's hands down, what I love about it is it's hands down got the dark. If you get the bad ending, it's the darkest ending in the franchise's history.
Oh yeah, the one where it's heavily implied that Robotnik has murdered Tails.
Yes, like if you thought SA2 was sad, then Christ, man, at least Shadow gives his life. Shadow dies in that game, saving the world. In the bad ending of Sonic 2 on the Master System, Eggman just kills Tails.
It's got a lot of cool levels, Underground Zone, Sky High. What were the other levels in that game? I think it's the only one I've ever played where I had to watch my mum finish it instead of actually being able to finish it myself.
There's levels like Green Hills, which obviously, of course, the basic melody of Green Hills Zone was reused as the melody of Sonic You Can Do Anything, the Japanese main theme of Sonic CD.
Oh yeah, do 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 do
Do do do do do do.
Yeah.
There's There's levels like Crystal Lake Zone, Scrambled Egg Zone. Coming out before Sonic 2, coming out before Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive, the Master System version did a bunch of things like the Master System version is actually the first time you fight a Silver Sonic. It actually has a interesting twist. Basically, to go back quickly to Sonic 1, if you don't get all the emeralds in either version of Mega Drive Master System, the only thing that happens is you don't get the good ending. Like you still complete the game, just like the world won't entirely be brought back to life type of thing. In Sonic 2, if you don't get all the Chaos Emeralds, which you get them the same way you did in the Master System version of 1, they're hidden in levels. You don't actually progress to the final boss, which is how you get the bad ending. If you don't get all the Chaos Emeralds, you don't actually fight Robotnik.
I wanted Crystal Egg Zone to be in the 3DS version of Generations so badly, because I always loved how that level looked.
Game Gear Games, LOL.
And, it's funny, just moving on to the Mega Drive one now, both versions were harder than both versions of Sonic 1, which I always found to be very interesting, and the Game Gear version of Sonic 2 is harder than the Master System counterpart, mostly owing to the fact that the screen size is much smaller.
Well, yeah, the screen size screws you up in a lot of bosses. Like take for instance the first boss on the Master System version, which is hilarious because basically Robotnik saves Sonic from falling into a pit of lava, and then proceeds to try and kill him. What an idiot!
Fuck you, Mother Nature! I'm gonna be the one to kill
exactly.
This new fuck.
If I can't kill him, no one can.
Yeah, so I know you love Sonic 2, so splurge away.
Because it's awesome. I mean, like it takes on a lot of stuff the first one did, and improves it. The speed is heightened. The spin dash. The spin dash was the boost back in the day. Like that's what us '90s kids use as the boost. You spin dash the fuck out of everything. It introduced Tails, which, in hindsight, some people think was a mistake. I'm actually trying to. I think Tails was actually added just to justify the two-player mode, which, if we're honest, was a bit lame.
I never cared for it.
Well, but by two-player mode, I should mean I'm talking about the racing thing, where you had Emerald Hill Zone, Casino Nights, and Mystic Cave, and basically it was just a race to the finish. They also had the special stages, but I think that's the only reason why he was included as a character.
I never actually cared for Sonic 2. I find it to be a very tricky game, and what I mean by that is you can get into a flow, but at least in my experience, and I will admit I'm terrible at video games, as you all should know by now, there will always be some obstacle that will come out of nowhere, be it a projectile from off screen, or something popping up from the ground, be it a badnik spikes or whatever, that will make you lose your rings, and that just frustrates me to no end.
Well, like this, I think I wouldn't say it's divided in the fan base because most people tend to enjoy it.
Oh yeah, it's one of the greatest Sonic games. I'm not debating that at all. The frustration factor is just too much for me to ever put it on a top 10 or whatever.
Yeah, I remember even when it was released back in the day, I think it was Game Master magazine gave it 60% because while I prefer it to 1, I can see why some people might prefer 1, because as I said before, 1 requires a lot more precision platforming. 2 it's a lot more just about speed and destroying stuff. Like I'm trying to think, and I haven't played 2 in a few months, but like of specific sections where you need to slow down. I can only think of unless you're a skilled player, there's a few bits in like Chemical Plant where you have to like get on a platform, otherwise you fall into the Mega Mac. There's like sections just like in say Metropolis Zone. There's a few sections there, but on the whole, there's not. Well, I guess again, unless you're a seasoned player, most of Wing Fortress, to be fair, you can't just blast through that on your first go because you will just fall to your bloody death. But I mean, to me, the levels were just more detailed. They were bigger than the levels, even though there were fewer acts. They were longer than the levels in 1. The level tropes, because 2 introduced a bunch of original level tropes, and some that still haven't been redone to this day. For my money, the soundtrack was better. Just the bosses were better. I mean, like in terms of final bosses, I know in the last year or so we've been hammered over the head with it thanks to 4, episode 1 and Generations. But the first time you fight that, the Death Egg Robot is a fantastic boss.
You see, this is what I'm talking about when I say Sonic 2 is a very tricky game. Going back to Metropolis, I hate that stage. I just really do. The bandits are designed to be overly dickish.
Splicer, you piece of shit. Oh, sorry, Slicer. And Asteron, you fucking bastards.
We're not going to get into, what's his name, Crabhammer?
Crap. So for my money, he's pretty easy to avoid. But the problem with the Slicers and the Asterons is when you're on the boats, like running up and down, you really don't have much of a choice. You basically have to run and just get twatted by them.
Yeah, I use the supersonic strategy, the triple S, when going through Metropolis Zone. There's no other way. I'm not having that kind of frustration when I'm playing a Sonic game. And yeah, the final boss, give me one ring. That's all I'm asking for. Don't ask me to go through a boss that uses projectiles, and then a boss with a very finicky hitbox without being able to take a hit.
See, Tom, we baked this. Actually, this is something. Gamers back in the day, we weren't spoon-fed games, man. Like games back in the day were not made for pussies. You had to man up. And friggin', I kind of wish that the team back then had made Generations. Because it would have put some challenge into it. And I don't mean challenge in the sense of time eater makes no sense. I mean challenge in the sense of like perfect chaos being an absolute pushover. I mean I love the version in Generations, but he's still a pushover. Like it's just I wish current games, took a few pages out of the games of old, and actually made them really fucking hard.
No, you see, I think we define challenge in very different ways. You define challenge as do or die. I define challenge as something that's hard but doable.
Well, no, Death Egg is it's all about pattern. Because I mean, like, I remember the first time you get to Death Egg Zone and you fight Silver Sonic. Me and my brother, we wrote on paper because but back then we like hit him once and then run away. We actually wrote down his pattern. That went on for like a minute. Nowadays, you can kill him in like 10 seconds. Just, go up to him, spin dash him, and he gets hit like 7 times in a row just there. But I mean, it's just like the Death Egg. Going back to the first Death Egg when you don't have any rings, unless you're playing the super easy mode version on Sonic Jams, which is actually quite fun to play through. That's a boss that just from the start he intimidates the fuck out of you because If you read game guides, they will tell you. Like I actually have the official Sonic the Hedgehog 2 game guide that was released back in the 90s, and that tells you to pretty much wait until he walks forward and bends down, and then hit him once. If you did that, you'd be there for like 8 minutes. Whereas most people, unless you're playing with Knuckles, because his jump sucks, basically you just every time he takes a step, you just jump up and twat the bastard.
Now, I know you're supposed to hit him while he's walking and his hand pulls back, but what you're meant to do there, I think you're meant to do the Insta-Shield. Was that in 2?
No, the Insta-Shield was introduced in 3.
Well, you're meant to bounce off him to some capacity, and I don't know what it is. It may be the version of the ROM I was playing, either on the Virtual Console or just the ROM itself was faulty. But I always seem to slide into him like a pixel or 2 deep and just die instantly.
The problem with you can jump over his arm. I found it works better if he's stationary. Like how he walks and for a second he'll stop with his hand out before he steps back and squats down. You can jump over that. It's just easier if you basically have to take a running leap up, and the second you hit him, just put your hand on back so he flies off.
So, well, yeah, I understand that, but I just don't care for bosses which force you into do or die situations. Make it as hard as you want. Just give me some health to go along with it.
So again, I have to go back to in the 90s. Developers didn't fuck around.
Yeah, I know. I grew up in the same decade as you, Gareth.
But
you're only 2 or 3 months older.
You should man up and like it, man.
No, my favourite game is the one we're going to discuss next. But before we get to that, I do have to give Sonic 2 its dues. It's rightfully one of the most famous Sonic games ever created. It's a masterpiece. It's got a fantastic soundtrack. looks great, and I like Tails. He's probably one of my favourite Sonic characters.
Same here.
Now, 3 and K.
Well, do you want to tackle them as one, or do you want to tackle them individually?
I'll take them as one package, because let's be honest, that's how they were always envisioned.
That was how they were envisioned, but of course, while they were making that, Sega found out that the game would be far too big to fit onto one cartridge. So they were actually deciding what to do. I mean, there were talks of trying to squeeze it on. Basically, they had always planned to release 3 on its own first, but then talk him on what to do next. There were talks of trying to squeeze it onto one cartridge and call it Sonic 3 Special Edition, but that was kind of quickly abandoned. And of course, as everyone knows now, they did the lock-on technology, which, let's be honest, that was DLC like 15 years before there was any DLC. Because I mean, not only basically it gave you kind of 4 new games in one. Because it gave you, well, first off, it gave you Sonic and Knuckles, which was really the second half of what the whole of Sonic 3 should have been. Gives you Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which gives you a chance to have all your characters play through all 14 stages, or 12 in Knuckles' case, or 13 in Tails' case. Lets you play as Knuckles in those levels. It allows Knuckles to play in Sonic 2.
And if you connect, like, I forget, there's very specific games that work with this, but if you put a certain Mega Drive game into Sonic and Knuckles, you'll get the blue spheres.
Yeah, well, normally it's like most people try it with Sonic 1. Now, they say they were going to try and adapt Knuckles into Sonic 1, but it was something to do with Knuckles' color would have meshed with the color palette for that game, so it wouldn't have worked. So they just thought, fuck it, we'll just put blue splare on it.
Now, I consider 3 and K to be the pinnacle of 2D Sonic games. It's got the best selection of levels, it's got the best soundtrack, it's got the best level design, and the idea of being able to go through a stage with another character with like paths and obstacles designed specifically for them, and it's such a genius idea that I can't believe outside of maybe the Advanced series that they haven't used it again.
For me, I keep going back and forth every few months about which is my favourite classic, 2 or 3 and K. I mean, 3 and K does so much, but 3 and K does so much awesome shit. Like, I love the level and zone transitions. I love the fact that you don't just run off, because who actually knows how far apart, like, Enwood Hill Zone 1 and 2 are.
Exactly. And it's telling a story without actually saying a word.
And that's another thing. Like, that's the thing where Yuji Naka kept on saying that they wanted to bring in more of a story element. In most games, like if you want to say go with say Mario, you pretty much have no story until you get to the end, and then you might have some text saying like, "Thank you, Mario, for rescuing me. Now let's go have a party." Lows. The fact that a lot of stuff happens in Sonic 3 in terms of story. I mean, for like a Mega Drive platformer, quite a lot of information is given in that. Which,
it's like the Death Egg takes off, crashes again, and then takes off again, all in the span of like 14 levels.
Well, you don't really see it. Oh yeah, I get. Well, takes off, crashes. Oh yeah, I guess so.
Because don't forget, it takes off from where Sonic 2 ended. The Death Egg crashes, and that's what Sonic and Tails are going to explore at the start.
Which, have you seen the original intro from Sonic 3?
I have not, no.
The original intro is, instead of Sonic and Tails arriving on a tornado and Sonic going super, it has Sonic surfing onto the floating island.
What?
There's videos of it on YouTube. It's actually kind of funny to see him like surfing on some waves, and he jumps onto the floating island.
Let me look at this shit.
It's pretty funny. But I think one of the biggest things, of course, in 3 and K was introducing Knuckles.
Oh yeah, I love that cocky bastard.
Well, see, This is where Sega can't keep track of their own canon, because for those of you who remember Knuckles' theme song from SA1, unknown from ME, that pretty much the opening line is, here I come, rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather, you can call me Knuckles, unlike Sonic I don't chuckle. Which, if you remember, the first thing we see him do in 3 is firstly, knock the shit out of Sonic, and then laugh.
Like, haha, these are my emerald peace.
Exactly, and then he runs off like a bastard.
What world is this that we live in that we can't even trust rap lyrics to tell us the truth?
I know. Well, see, I've always wondered, like, I'm sure it's been explained, but why is the floating island, like, crash landed at the start of 3 and K for?
Maybe it's because the Chaos Emeralds have been taken from them.
Well, no, see, that don't work because at the end of 3 and K, the KSM would have taken off there anyway.
That don't make a lick of sense.
Exactly. You know what? Fuck 3 and K. That game makes no sense.
Well, actually, the Death Egg crashes onto it, so maybe it slammed it so fucking hard that it pushed it out of orbit and sent it into the ocean.
I guess so. Seems legit.
Indeed. So, what else is there to say about 3K other than it's fucking perfect, and the Sonic 2 fanboys are so jelly that it's better than 2, that they always have to split it up into 2 games. Suck it, haters.
Well, see, it's weird about that because I can only play it as a complete pack. Well, see, no, I can play 3 on its own, and I can play 3 and K. But for some reason, I can never bring myself to play Knuckles alone. If I play Sonic and Knuckles alone, like just the game, I can get up to like Sandopolis, and I'm like, you know what, fuck this, I'm playing something else.
It's because it feels like the second half of a story, and you're missing out on the intro.
It just to me, it just doesn't seem as fun when you're playing it just the Knuckles levels. I don't know why. It's just kind of. Oh, but I mean, like some of my favorite levels in the entire franchise. You know, like Hydro City, which is, you know, I love Hydro City.
Is it Hydro City or Hydrocity?
Well, it varies. There was a thing on Sonic Retro where the owner of that, Scarred Sun, I believe her name is, she was she went through this whole thing where, like, you know how anal the retro guys are about, like, they're like researching the classics. Apparently, she was reading some from the original Japanese source material, which translates as like Water City or something. So it's Hydro City. Not, you know. Well, if you're playing the game, to be fair, there is no space. So if you wanna pronounce it Hydrocity, that's fine. Just when I was that young, I couldn't pronounce that word, so I just said Hydro City because I was an ignorant little shit.
Well, it makes sense to me because it's hydro plus velocity, and you go pretty damn fast in that stage.
But you know, I look at it as a water city. So to me, it is, you know, Hydro City makes sense. A level that a lot of people don't like for some reason, but I love is Marble Garden.
I can see what you mean.
I love Marble Garden. I think the music track is. I mean, again, you said earlier, but the musical score is just unbelievable.
I would say the only one that comes close, modern-wise, is Colours. Colours is like a modern equivalent of Sonic 3 Knuckles soundtrack.
Yeah, I can say it. I could see that. Well, I think Colours is probably, you know, excluding Generations, Colours pretty much is pretty much a classic game in 3D. You know, in terms of style and tone. And, you know, layout, Colours pretty much is the closest we've gotten to a you know, a new 2D, 3D game type of thing.
Indeed, but we're getting ahead of ourselves now.
Exactly.
What classic game shall we cover next?
Well, in terms of main series, the only other one that is relevant is CD. Now,
yes, CD.
Yeah. Well, CD is a game which I'm sure if anyone listened to our commentary for it, I would note that I'm not the most kindest person towards CD. I don't. It's not that I think it's a terrible game per se. It's just I don't understand the love it gets. Although I will say though, since purchasing and playing the Taxman's remake of it, that came out at the end of 2011, I wouldn't say I flat out love it, but I found myself appreciating it more. I mean, I've always just, to me, like it's a case where, based on the sum of its parts, the whole should be better. Because it does so. I just, you know, there's so many great things. Like, I think the time travel aspect and the fact that there are 4 versions of each level is genius. To me, it's not implemented as well as it could be.
I find CD to be a game with fantastic aesthetic and presentation values. Like, it looks very nice, it's got a great soundtrack, and now that I've kind of got more acquainted with the Japanese European one, I'll say they're both about equal. But the level design, at points, I don't even know what they were thinking.
Same here. I mean, well, to me, it's more a case of the level design and the bosses are just well, even people who I've spoken to, like some people on Retro who freaking love CD, even they have to admit that the bosses are kind of weak.
They're probably the weakest in the series, actually.
The only one I could say I'd like, and it's not even that hard, but the treadmill boss from I believe Quartz Quadrant is at least extremely original.
Definitely, yeah. Actually, I quite enjoyed that boss.
Yeah, but I mean, just the final boss, that the fan thing is just compare that to like say the Death Egg from Sonic 2, like Big Arms from Sonic 3, and Doomsday Zone. Just I know technically CD should have CD's place in the canon timeline has been disputed for ages. It was released after 2, but started development beforehand, so canonly it probably should come between 1 and 2.
Which explains why the spin dash is there, yet it doesn't work as well as it did in 2.
Yeah. But I mean, I just think like the bosses are just kind of weird. I mean, like the Metal Sonic race, I never enjoyed that. Like there was type of thing where like it to me that should have been far better because that was really lame. I thought the race of Metal Sonic.
Well, it's funny, I didn't care for that at first either, but having played the version in Generations, I think it works much better as a race.
What do you mean? What? So what? Are you saying that the one in Gens is better?
No, the original's better, because when you take out the aspect of risk, having to beat Metal Sonic to a goal, he just doesn't live up to, say, the other robotic Sonics in the series, like Mecha from 3K, for example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I will admit that having Eggman there with that laser puts in the CD version puts a lot more strain. Like it has a level of tension which isn't there in the Gens version, because in the Gens version you can just take as long as you want to just to smack him. But I just found that the like design of the race course was just like and I've said this in an earlier video and someone kind of thought didn't really quite understand what I was saying, but it's kind of just like you just run for a bit and then you have to jump over a spike and then you run a bit more and you jump over a spike. I mean, to me, just that the level course isn't natural. It's designed. I assume it was designed in a way to be like extremely what's the word I'm looking for? Be extremely counterproductive to what Sonic's trying to do. Essentially, like I get that. A straight line for a race would be pretty lame, but I just found the actual course layout just extremely frustratingly awkwardly placed.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's an exercise in momentum, and for that it should be applauded, but it kind of goes with the rest of CD's level design, and if you like it, fine. I don't care that you like it, per se.
Oh yeah. I have no problem with people who think that game's the best. I just, if you love it, I respect that. I just can't see why, if that makes any sense.
But it's like CD was the only Sonic game I have ever needed an FAQ to fully complete, and I'm talking about like getting all the good futures, getting the time stones and whatnot, because
the time stones.
It's a very methodical style of gameplay, and it is a puzzle finding the right spots to zoom through time in.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That's why I know that this came up on Retro, where like some of the people who love the game are like some of the best players. When someone comes up with with the notion that it's a pain in the arse to gain up speed to travel to the task, some people will be like, well, if you they say that once you've practiced the levels and the layout by hand, getting to the past isn't a problem. To which I say, well then, if you really have to, work hard to memorize the level layout, then where's the fun in that?
If you have to practice your arse off 24/7 to enjoy a game, then that's not a game and it's not fun. It's just work.
And that's how I feel about Wacky Workbench. Hands down, the worst level in my opinion, one of the, including '06, because that goes without saying, but like it's one of the worst, most frustrating levels in the history of the universe.
I have never heard anyone praise it. Anyone.
Apparently, I'm not sure how true this is, but apparently Izuka wanted to put it in Generations. Like, what?
That crafty motherfucker.
What the fuck is your problem, you troll?
Oh god, can you just imagine a Mon version of that?
Gee, oh man, imagine boosting into the fucking workbench.
That sure would be wacky.
God, I hate that level. Let's skip this game because just thinking about it is making me frustrated.
Now, before we move on to the next era, can we just address Sonic 3D Blast / Flicky's Island?
Which version are we just talking about the Mega Drive version?
Yes, because I think that's the only version we've both played.
Oh no, I actually own it on Saturn.
Oh really?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say it's pretty much identical, with the exception of the special stages. The special stages were reformatted to pretty much be a real 3D version of like the Sonic 2 ones. But apart from that, with just improved graphics and a different soundtrack, it's pretty much the same game.
Now, I don't know what it is about Flicky's Island. It's one of those Sonic games that I would call it a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
The isometric gameplay is very fiddly at times. Some of the bosses are so-so, especially the one in Volcano Valley where you have to land on that pipe and then you have to hit him in the centre of the lava. That always frustrated me to no end. But I don't know, maybe it's because it was bright, it was colourful, and it had a great soundtrack that I give it a pass.
Well, see, it's one of those games where I like it and I enjoy playing it, but every time I play it, when I get up to about Spring Stadium Act 2, I'm starting to get bored of this.
Yeah, Spring Stadium is probably the weakest stage in that game.
There's actually like I don't really play fan hacks or fan games, but there's this one on Retro where it's basically it's the gaming equivalent of Garfield minus Garfield. It's Sonic. It's basically Flicky's Island, but the flickies aren't mandatory. You just run to which I would gladly play that game, because the monotony of Flicky's Island comes with when you get all 5 flickies and then they get hit. Because there's blue, there's purple, there's red, and there's green. When it hit, blue actively tries to find Sonic, so good for him. I like that guy because he's helpful. Purple basically just wanders around.
Don't get me started on red.
Red, the bastard. Red is basically the bird version of Knuckles, just an annoying bastard. He just jumps around. He goes out of his way to just move as far away from you as possible. And Green I forget what Green does. Green's the fat one, so I imagine he just stays still.
Yeah, Green doesn't go far. Too many pies.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just, I would actually play that. There's also a version of that where they hacked in Supersonic, which would be awesome to play as.
So yeah, that's what I think about. Sorry, I'm just looking at something Gaming Brit did to the HellfireComms TV tropes page.
Although I will just say though, in terms of the Mega Drive version, the most pathetically easy special stages in the entire franchise.
Look at why I just linked you.
That trolling bastard, that's genius.
That's amazing. So yeah, that's what I think about Flicky's Island. It's a guilty pleasure. It's far from being the best Sonic game ever, but it will always find a home on my top 10.
Before we proceed to the next era, I just have two very simple words to say about Sonic Spinball, and those 2 words are fuck you. Moving on.
Yes, now Sonic Adventure. You probably know a bit more about the backstory and going on behind the scenes than I do. So, do you want to kick us off?
So I will start, but firstly, I just want to go off on a slight detour and say I don't mean this in like a crazy obsessed gamer way, but Sonic Adventure literally changed my life. If Sonic Adventure hadn't been released and I hadn't played it, I wouldn't be here today. Not in the sense that I'd be dead, but just I wouldn't be doing this, because that game, like growing up as a kid, for the first 6 months of having a Dreamcast, I had Sonic Adventure, a controller, and no memory card. So I would literally play that game over and over and over again, just go through all the characters. and I freaking love that game. Like that game one basically. If it wasn't for that game, there'd be no FTCR. If there's no FTCR, I wouldn't be part of Hellfire Commentaries, which means that just I wouldn't have made a bunch of friends, wouldn't have met my wife and all this crazy crap. Just that game and just that as a kid, you see, it's very hard for me to look at SA1 without rose-tinted glasses. For SA2, I'm fine with that. I can see the flaws in SA2. I mean, I still like it, but I completely see the flaws in that game.
I feel exactly the same way. Yeah.
I I know they're there in SA1, but I find myself being able to overlook them where I'm not able to with SA2 because SA1 just means it's just like I don't mean like the I'm not gonna like start. I'm not gonna like start a religion for SA1, but that game means like on a personal level, that's probably my most treasured game.
My earliest memory of Sonic Adventure, of Sonic Adventure was when my granddad took me to see a movie at the Odeon Cinema in Nottingham City Centre, and they had a Dreamcast set up in the foyer. And you could play like a level. I think it was a demo that Sega were distributing at the time, and you could play like one level as I think it was either Sonic Tails or Gamma.
Nice.
So I played Sky Chase. I think it was the Windy Valley race with Tails and one of the Gamma stages, and I was just like blown away. I was like, I can't remember what my 10-year-old self was thinking at the time, but something along the lines of, "This is Sonic 3 and Knuckles." Brought up to a new standard. Little did I know that half a decade later, people wouldn't exactly feel the same way about it. But at the time, I was just so completely enamoured with it. You had all these different characters. I know today that not all of them were the best, big, but at the time, it was such a novel concept for me to play for a story that intertwined.
Yes.
Yeah, and you saw it from different angles, and I've always loved that. Different gameplay styles you can take and leave, but it's just the story, how it interconnected and whatnot. And on a personal level, that was one of the last games me and my granddad played together before he passed away. I think it was early 2000s, and he always he's partially the reason I'm into Sonic as much as I am, because he would always every weekly and then every fortnight he'd purchase the Sonic comic and then read it to me. And I specifically remember him sitting with me when I beat Perfect Chaos for the first time.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. Do you want to? But I'm getting a bit sentimental here. So do you want to break down the gameplay and the music for us?
Okay, well, basically the gameplay is split down into 6 basic models. You have Sonic, which pretty much Sonic plays as you would expect him to. Only he's in three dimensions, and he has a helmet attack. He still has spin dash. His objective is to basically run as fast as you possibly can to the end of the level to either collect Chaos Emerald or rescue Tails or open up a Badnik capsule. Tails pretty much plays like Sonic, only you can fly. But Tails' gimmick, as it were, is that all of his levels are races. When you're playing most of them, he has 5 levels. Sonic has 10 levels. Tails has 5. For 4 of those levels, you're racing against Sonic to either collect the Chaos Emerald or open a Badnik capsule. The last one you're racing against Eggman in Station Square. Knuckles is gameplay style is he has to collect Chaos Emeralds. Master Emeralds, which it's an odd thing for Knuckles to do, but I find in SA1, because it makes sense for the story, I don't have a problem with it. But basically, Knuckles' levels, they're kind of more open-ended type of thing. Basically, you're just given a big level, and you have to just travel around searching for Master Emerald shards.
Yeah, I specifically like Speed Highway as Knuckles.
Yeah, Speed Highway as Knuckles is pretty sweet. Then you have Amy, which are brought back from Sonic CD. Amy kind of plays like a really slowed down version of Sonic, only she's being her levels are kind of stealthy in a sense because you're being chased by a giant robot called Zero. Amy's attack is she's given a hammer, which is the first time it appears, the Pico hammer. And pretty much you have to run around escaping Zero, doing slight puzzles here and there, and then you have to jump on, for some reason, onto a giant balloon. which whoop-de-doo. Next we have Gamma, which is a robot, or to give him his full name, E102 Gamma. He is a robot, and he has shoot 'em up levels. Most of these levels have a timer, so you're fighting against the clock to try and his story is he breaks free of Eggman's command, and he decides to rescue his brothers who are trapped in the fellow E1 series. So he goes around tracking down his brother Beta, Epsilon. Basically, you shoot shit, and then we get the Big Cat, which at SOS 12, when current series producer and director of Sonic Adventure, Tasaka Izuka, forget my pronunciation there, was asked what his biggest regret in the franchise was, he said, fishing in SA1.
Which is amazing, because everyone was expecting him to say Sonic 2006, let's be honest.
Well, he actually didn't have anything to do with 2006.
Well, I thought we were talking in generalities here. In terms of what's the greatest failure in the Sonic franchise.
Yeah. Big the Cat fishes, which is not what you would expect from a Sonic game. A lot of people theorise that at the time when the Dreamcast came out, because SA1 was a launch title, as was Sega Bass Fishing, which was a big game, they were like, fuck it, let's put it in. Well, I believe it was either Naka or Izuka had said they had wanted a slower character to I guess maybe round the game out a bit.
Well, they fucking succeeded.
Well, see, they had Amy for that, because Amy was slow. Like, compared to Sonic, Amy was slow as hell. But Big has fishing, but he only has 3 levels, I think. He's 3 or 4. He has the shortest story in the game, which, if you know what you're doing, you can blast through it in a little while, and think the less said, the better. Now, onto the music. This was when Jun Sonoy came into his own. Jun Sonoy was the sound director for SA1. He was also, I believe, I think he was sound director for the Mega Drive version of 3D Blast. He may or may not be sound director, but he did about half the music for 3D Blast. He started with Sonic 3 and Knuckles. He did a handful of tracks for those, and just the sound team basically is the all stars of modern Sonic music. I mean, you got Fumi Kat. Again, my pronunciation is absolutely terrible because I can't really pronounce Japanese names. But you have let me just get my list. It's the Fumi Katamura, Kenichi Toko. I won't try and pronounce it anymore because they're terrible. But Kenichi Toko, who was sound director for Sonic Colors and has done tracks in most main series Sonic games, stated that he thinks the SA1 as a whole is his favourite soundtrack just because of the music involved in it is of such a high caliber.
What I liked about the soundtrack is, and this is something that SA2 kind of picked up and ran with, is that each character has their own specific genre and style of music.
Well, I would say in terms of, because everyone the soundtrack for SA1 is one of my favourites because it was the first time I'd ever heard proper songs in a video game. For me, Sonic R doesn't count because I never looked at those as like songs, if you know what I mean. But like the fact that they had like Tony Harnell, Johnny Gioeli, Ted Poley, 3 of the maybe not famous, but like 3 of like the best rock singers you could ever hope to find. And it's thanks to SA1 that I went on to become fans of like 6 other bands just based on their stuff in SA1. But what SA1 did is that each character's theme was a specific genre, but the level music was catered around the level itself, not the character, which is a slight problem I have with SA2 score, because in SA2 these songs are catered towards the character, not the level itself. But we'll get onto that in a few minutes. But I just in my heart I know it's glitchy. The animations in the cutscenes is terrible. The sound editing is abysmally bad.
It won't get terribly bad until the second game, but still.
But I mean, like I know it has all these problems. Like don't send us comments saying like in SA1 this is crap and that's terrible. Like chances are we know. We just don't care because I love that game. Leave me alone. I love SA1. That game's amazing.
So, what's your final opinion on SA1 then?
Oh, SA1, Christ, probably tied with Colors as my favorite 3D game. But again, if I had to pick like if I had to pick not on a technical or fun to play level, if I had to pick one game that means the most to me, it's SA1. Because without that game, like that game shaped so much of my life that just like that I love it.
A few comments before we move on. Gameplay-wise, I think the only story that I didn't really care for, and if you removed it, you probably wouldn't have lost anything at all, is Amy's. Because I've never liked stealth for one thing, and I didn't like the idea that you could only hit zero 3 times before he becomes invincible. Yeah, go on.
Well, see, yeah, as a whole, you can take out Amy's story, but I love her final cutscene was the moment where, as a character, she grows up. At the end of SA1, she basically says, "You know what? I'm tired of chasing Sonic. I'm not gonna chase him anymore. I'm gonna be my own woman, and I'm gonna make him respect me, and I'm gonna make him chase me." So I was like, that's brilliant. As a like Tails and Amy have real character development in SA1. Like they grow as characters, they learn stuff, that they mature, and I was like, that's amazing. Then it gets to SA2. Amy just reversed. I mean, Amy would go back to Stalker, to quote TV tropes, she would go back to Stalker with a crush, and to possibly, you can make the case of possibly Unleashed. But, like, she became, in my eyes, as a character, useless after SA1. They just ruined her character. Tails pretty much is given the same arc in SA2, in the sense of, I have to do this on my own, I can't rely on Sonic anymore, Eggman, I'm going to kill you, type of thing. But, rant over.
Musically, it's probably one of my favourite soundtracks in the entire franchise, and
hell
Speed
yes.
Highway at Dawn. The reason I picked that as the 100th HellfireComms VG Music pick is because that perfectly personifies Sonic music for me. Because
Really?
it's classically stylized, but it's brought up to modern day standards, and it sounds fresh.
I might get some hate for this, but I'm not saying I hate it, but I don't quite share the love for At Dawn that so many people do.
Ooh, we're gonna have some words after this recording.
Exactly. But I love SA1. Just fantastic.
End line. Now, SA2, Gareth.
That's the 10th anniversary game, the follow up to kind of mimicking the original Sonic 1 as SA1 was designed in Japan by Sonic Team. Sonic 2, Yuji Naka and some of the key developers moved over to America and set up shop in the Sega Institute of America, designed the game there. Likewise, SA2 was developed in America, designed and made there. Apparently for a smaller budget and smaller development time than SA1 did, which is, when you look at it, it's pretty impressive for that matter. But basically, Sonic Adventure 2 basically streamlines a lot of what SA1 had. 6 characters are still here. There's 3 new ones. The only remaining characters from the previous game that are playable are Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, who comprise Hero Side. In terms of playing each character individually, there's now 2 halves to a story. There's Hero Side and Dark Side. On Dark Side, you have with the exception of some of the racing games, it's the first time you have a playable Eggman in a game, which is pretty cool, I think.
Outside of Sonic R, of course.
Oh yeah, I mean, outside of R and Drift, there was outside of racing games, it's the first time it's been made playable.
But who gives a fuck about Sonic Drift or his sequel?
Yeah, Sonic Drift. Well, Sonic Drift wasn't even released outside of Japan. Only Sonic Drift 2 was, which should tell you everything you need to know about that series.
I think I unlocked that in SADX and started crying.
Of course, SA2 is the game that introduced probably the most divided character in the franchise history.
Polarizing doesn't even begin to cover this character.
Exactly. I am, of course, referring to Recolor fan character, original Do Not Steal. No, talking about Shadow, obviously, Shadow the Hedgehog, and of course, Rouge the Bat. Sonic and Shadow play exactly like Sonic did in SA1. Knuckles and Rouge pretty much play like Knuckles did. Only the levels are bigger, and the homing device is nerfed, which is annoying to say the least. Now, Tails and Eggman play kind of like Gamma,
Yeah,
only there's no time limit and it's slightly easier to control. I will say this: Eggman in the mech makes perfect sense because you couldn't play as him walking around because it'd be stupid. Tails in the mech I never liked because I loved playing as Tails in SA1. Like in certain respects, Tails in SA1 in certain respects Tails was more fun to play than Sonic was because he was just about as fast, but he could fly, and that's
definitely.
awesome.
And of course, flying opens up new paths.
Exactly, but he's referring to his mech, and it's just it wasn't as fun in my opinion. Like as a whole, like the you could make the case, and I wouldn't argue with you too much, that the Sonic levels in SA2 in certain respects are superior to the Sonic sections in SA1, which certain levels I could concede to that, and I'd agree with you.
They're definitely more technical.
Yes, it's just the shooting and treasure hunting sections break it down, in my opinion.
Let's go through each gameplay style in turn. We've covered speed. It's basically a more technical version of the SA1 stages.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were thinking with the Master Emerald shard thingamabob, the radar. Who thought it would be a good idea to have it so you can only find them in a specific order?
Well, we should for those of you who don't know, in SA1 for the Knuckles levels you have to find three shards of the Master Emerald in a level, but your radar will allow you, as soon as you're near one of them, it will let you know when you're close to any of them. In SA2, for whatever reason, they decided that you could only locate one at a time. I mean, like you could find other ones, but it would just be like a lucky guess type of thing. Like you're only allowed to, the radar will only let you know if you're near one specific shard, and it's weird, and I don't understand why they did it.
It makes stages like Mad Space
Oh Christ!
just a harrowing experience, really.
The knuckle stages in SA2, some of them are on the roof stages. They're far too big for their own good.
Definitely.
I mean, those like the scope and size of those stages would kind of be fun to like explore if you were just trying to get from point A to point B. They're not fun when you spend sometimes upward of 10 minutes searching for tiny shit.
Absolutely horrible. The only stage that I really cared for in terms of Knuckles and Rouge is Pumpkin Hill, because Pumpkin Hill is fucking awesome.
Pumpkin Hill, yeah.
And its theme has actually grown on me a lot as the years have gone by.
Yeah,
And yeah, and Rouge's stage, Prison Hall, I think it's called.
Prison Hall, okay, yeah. I was just never a big fan. Well, see, it's only a small thing, but I find it's easier for me. It was easier for me to play the fishing levels or the collecting levels in SA1 because you choose to select that character to play as it. In SA2, when you play through story mode, you're basically thrown from shooting level to a speed level to a treasure level to a speed level, and I know like it's a weird thing to say, but having that choice of freedom, at least for me, this is just for me, having the choice of freedom to choose to play like the fishing levels made them slightly more bearable.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to complete SA1, you had to play them. There's no choice in the matter.
Oh, yeah.
But you could play the stories in any order that you wanted. And even better, you could dip in and out of the stories as you saw fit.
Yeah, exactly. Also, like a nice wall. So, for something that they brought over was the interlocking story. So, like when you say start open with hero side story, Sonic has been captured by the military, and it's only through kind of going back and playing dark side story do you really understand why that's happened. I mean, stuff like that is in terms of the story, I like that, but just I don't know, just I don't. Kind of like with Sonic CD. Well, Sonic Adventure 2, when it was re-released for the GameCube, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle became the first game that a lot of current gamers played. It was their first Sonic game, so it's a lot of people view that as their favorite and the best Sonic game. Which it's their opinion. That's fine, but it's just maybe it's just something I question that if it wasn't their first game, okay, oh, I'm saying this as I'm sure people who love SA2, are more critical of SA1, whereas I'm never around, so I can't really get too much on their case that way. But just there's so many little things about SA2 just kind of annoy me.
Just before we get to gameplay proper, shooting stages, they're I can tolerate them. They're kind of like a more platform-heavy version of Gamma's story in SA1.
Yeah.
And I was never very adept at racking up combos, so I would always get C ranks when I played as Tails or Robotnik.
Yeah, I was never very good at those really either.
And that's about all I have to say about that. So, music.
Well, Jun Senoi returns as a sound director. Bringing back a lot of the same singers from Tony Harnell reprises a cover of "It Doesn't Matter," just like Marlon Sanders prizes Unknown from MA, but he's joined by Hunted P instead of Dreadfox.
And guess what? The SA1 versions are massively superior.
Yeah, I do. That they have Kaz Silver reprises does a cover of "Believe in Myself," but unfortunately she I don't like her voice as much as Karen Brake from SA1. And as I said earlier, every character is given a style. Like Knuckles, for whatever reason, is given rap. Because Rouge takes his jazz motif from SA1. Sonic is given ska, which sounds amazing.
I like ska.
I like ska. Tails is kind of given techno pop music type of thing. Eggman is given a slightly heavier techno music, like it's kind of like heavy guitars with synthesizers, as opposed to the Tails has kind of like pop guitars and synthesizers.
Would you say straight techno then?
See, I'm not like the best judge of this, but I don't think techno generally includes guitars normally. I don't know. Does it really? Yeah. And Shadow is pretty much just given rock, essentially. Which there's some good tunes here and there. I actually find the soundtrack this off the topic. SA2 is actually Jun Chinoy's favorite soundtrack that he's composed. He said, for that though, whereas Kenichi Toko says that his favorite is SA1 because of the music itself, June says that SA2 is his favorite because of the experience he had making it. But yeah, so when you're playing as a character, the music that plays is depends on the character itself as opposed to the situation. Which I always prefer it in, like, basically every other Sonic game, the music in a level is depicted about the stage itself. Not so with SA2, and for that reason, I think that it's not as strong as it could have been.
I mean, it's a great soundtrack. You got Live and Learn, Prison Lane, Escape from the City.
Escape from the City. To go back to Jun Chinoy, of course, Jun Chinoy, sound director and of course guitarist for Crush 40, has said that his favourite songs he's composed for the franchise are Live and Learn, but especially Escape from the City, because he said, and I quote, everyone loves that song. Whether like English fans, Japanese fans, American fans, even people who criticise the Sonic franchise for being quote unquote butt rock, most of them will say that Escape from the City is at least an extremely guilty pleasure to listen to. So, like, everyone loves Escape from the City, which,
I'm not really a fan of Rouge's music, apart from Fly in the Freedom, which is a decent track.
I like some of her jazz. It's just a case of it doesn't really fit the level she's in.
And it's definitely a more inconsistent soundtrack than SA1.
it's a lot more polarizing. Well, maybe not polarizing. It's a lot more.
That's a perfect word to describe SA2 as a whole for me, really.
Well, just as a whole, the sound again. It's just I I don't really have a problem. I just wish the levels would fitted the music better. You
Yeah.
know.
You wish it was more thematically sound, then?
Yeah, exactly. Which is pretty much every other game has done that. It just to go back to SA2 also has, without question, the worst sound editing in the entire franchise.
Oh my Christ, it is so bad. I can't believe they didn't look at this and say, we're having a problem hearing the characters' dialogue here.
Well, see, like SA1, SA1 sound design was you could maybe just chalk it up into lazy. Well, I would say laziness, but the problem with SA1 sound design would be like a song would play, and then it would cut out. It wouldn't fade out. It would cut out, and a new song would begin, like within the same cutscene. So it just reeks of like 8-year-old movie maker video type of thing. SA2 reeks of sound of really bad sound mixing because music is in many cutscenes. Music is far too loud. Characters speak over each other, but with that, because these games are based in Japan and recorded in Japanese first, apparently some lines are just a result of it worked fine in the Japanese version. But which apparently what they say to go to script quickly. For SA1, the writers, whoever adapted SA1, did a quite genius thing of they kept the basic story, but pretty much rewrote it from scratch. So like the dialogue apparently is completely different from game to game. For SA2, from what they say is, it was written in English, translated into Japanese, and then retranslated back into English from the Japanese translation. Exactly, which is why there's certain things in SA2 that have like certain lines which just make no sense.
Oh my God.
Wait,
And I'll never understand why people feel the need to defend the sound editing by saying, "Oh, people talk like this naturally." Yes, they do, but this is a clear example of horrid sound editing, and I do this on a daily basis. I know when sound starts to clip and whatnot.
well, yeah, well, I would say like if people do talk over each other, but generally they won't respond. They won't give a response to like a statement halfway through what the original person is speaking. The most famous example is, of course, before the Sonic and Shadow battle in the jungle. Shadow's line is, "You're comparing yourself to me. Ha! You're not even good enough to be my fake." And Sonic's reply is, "I'll make you eat those words." The problem is, Sonic starts responding before Shadow has finished the sentence.
And another perfect example of the sound editing is just before their final battle. The music gets so loud it starts to drown Sonic out.
Yeah, I mean, like again, like the one cutscene I always remember is the one where Sonic and Tails enter the president's limousine. Like Sonic's theme plays so loud in that it's just like you can't hear what the hell Tails is saying.
Mr. President. And now we're going to cover the gameplay here, just overall. I don't. I find SA2 to be a very janky game, and I know that's such a throwaway criticism, but it feels less polished overall than SA1 did.
In certain respect, well, I would say on a certain level, I would maybe even agree that the speed sections are slightly more like you are far less likely to clip through things in Sonic levels than you are in. I mean, just try and play Emerald Coast and not glitch into the ocean, But it's just like I have no problem with the Sonic levels. I think a lot of them, with the possible exception of Final Rush, are extremely fun to play. But the shooting and treasure and levels they're kind of a chore because of stuff like bad gameplay devices, kind of weak level design. It's just I have less fun with SA2 than any other game.
What about the story?
I like the story. I mean, I even think that in terms of the actual story, I think SA2 may have a more coherent story. Like SA1 has a pretty okay story, but it's told through all the flashbacks and everything. Like basically you have to follow all the six character stories to kind of like understand the one big story.
I think
SA2.
in SA1, it's like, just to use genres here, in SA1, it's a mystery. In SA2, it's more like an action movie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. SA2 story is a lot more straightforward and it's a lot more to the point. I like the SA2 story. I think Shadow's arc in SA2 is probably one of the better character arcs in a game in the entire franchise. If he would have stayed dead, if he would have stayed dead, I think people would appreciate him a lot more. Um, in terms of dialogue, yeah, it's got some okay lines here and there, but just there's a lot of just redundant, repeating stuff in SA. Like, we gotta go over here, we gotta do this. We used to
I'll
fake
go
him
and
more to do
find the
this.
entrance.
Exactly. There's a lot of redundancy in SA2 script, which but
I think a lot of the popularity for 2 stems from Shadow himself. Because we all know how the fangirls love an angsty emo character, and I'm sorry, but it's true. And if you took Shadow out, I guarantee SA2 would not be nearly as popular.
well, see, at least in SA2 he had a reason to be angsty. Like that's the one game I accept angst from Shadow. Because it kind of it worked in the context of that game. I don't accept it in any others. Then I think a lot of the reason why 13-year-old boys, well, actually, I think the two reasons 13-year-old boys like SA2 is Rouge's cleavage.
No, that's just you, Gareth.
Fair play. I make no qualms about the hours I spent looking on DeviantArt.
Yeah, we're getting off something.
um. As a whole, not a terrible game, but again, probably wouldn't crack my top 10.
Yeah, I've found myself enjoying it less and less with each passing year.
Yeah, which I think is a great way to segue into Sonic Heroes.
Oh god, Sonic Heroes.
Sonic Heroes is a game with all my heart I want to love. Because on paper it sounds like the best Sonic game ever. It just...
I gotta tell you a little bit about how I felt on the run up to this. I loved SA2 at the time. Loved it. I was like, oh, Shadow's so cool. And
I'm the coolest.
yeah, exactly. He is the coolest. And the supersonic fight in space, taking down the final hazard. I was just buzzing. And when I heard they would bring out a new one, and you could play with 3 characters at once, I was like, oh man, oh god, oh man, oh god. And I looked for every single screenshot I could find of this. And then I found out the Chaotix crew was coming back. And I don't think we're going to bring it up here, because you haven't played Chaotix, have you?
No, I've seen a bunch of it, but I haven't seen it myself, no.
And much like 3D Blast / Flicky's Iron, Chaotix is another one of my guilty Sonic pleasures. And I was just so hyped to play another Sonic game, because I thought, oh wow, it's the 3rd one. It might be like 3 and Knuckles. Nope. What I got instead was the same game 4 times over.
Yep. Well, yeah, pretty well. It's like 99%. There's subtle differences, very subtle differences, between the levels. But it's just, it gives Izuka, director of the game, said that they purposely didn't make Sonic Adventure 3, like a game in the same style and vein of the Adventure series, because he felt that if that was the case, only like hardcore Sonic fans would have bought it. They wanted to, they wanted to make a game that would appeal more to the classic games and would evoke the Mega Drive games more, which that's fine by me. So that's why it's 2-act structures. There's a boss after each 2 acts. You can only get Chaos Emeralds after in special stages. You have to work to get to special stages. It goes back to like classic tried and trusted level gimmicks, like starting off in like a beach area. There's a casino level. There's like industrial level, there's an industrial level, and then they also added new stuff like the haunted house, which is extremely original level. It hasn't been done before or since.
Yeah. Mm. Now,
Um,
I don't care for those levels, but it's nice that they're there.
yeah, again, like I wouldn't say those two levels in particular are my favorite levels in Heroes, but I appreciate that they tried something original. Um, but which again, and then the music. June's back again. They're trying to evoke more of a Mega Drive. There's more kind of synth stuff. It's a lot more. The music goes back to kind of the SA1 style of the music is dictated by the stage itself, and so some of this, it matches the levels perfectly. Some of those tracks are just fantastic, but then you have to get into the gameplay, and
This is where the problem with Heroes comes in.
weird.
Aesthetically, it is almost perfect.
Oh, graphically, for a game on that generation, it's fantastic. Not the PS2 version. If you're playing a version of the game that runs at 60 frames per second, it's fantastic to look at. It looks amazing. Graphically, there's okay, maybe not the most technically advanced game, but everything moves beautifully. The covers are bright and vivid. The character animations are smooth. Everyone looks okay. I mean, they're a bit too shiny, but for a game that's trying to evoke the Mega Drive era and that's bright and colourful, I had no problem with the shininess in Heroes, but we'll get to Shadow, and that's why I have a fence with that one. But the gameplay just. Things don't work. Hit detection is off. Don't try and spin dash. For the love of Christ, don't spin dash. You'll die. You'll just go off a cliff. I mean, just the homing attack would bounce you off places. It's just
Flight is basically useless.
oh yeah, well, flight essentially you only ever go into flight if you have to, aviate slightly higher. Apart from that, don't ever use flight because it's given to be on door hill. Yes, it's a game that, as I said, on paper, sounds like the greatest game of all time. It's the Sonic, but it's a game that I want to love, and I play it, and I hate it, and I don't play it for months on end, and I'm like, you know what, maybe I was wrong, maybe I should give it a second chance. So I go back to play it, and I hate it.
It's like when we were doing that race through Heroes. I'm like, this is really fun. This reminds me of, maybe not Free and Knuckles, but a bit of Sonic 2 here and there. And that's not an insult, I'm just talking aesthetically here. But the more I played, it's like Sonic was slipping and sliding all everywhere, like he's like running on ice or some shit. Homing attacks send me flying off the stage sometimes. I'm missing my mark.
Grinding is
oh god.
when you get to Rail Canyon, the grinding, good sweet Christ, it's incredibly finicky because moving from rail to rail kills you. Maybe this is just me because I suck, but for me, trying to switch rails killed me way more than anything else in that game.
And I mean, it's a Sonic game aesthetically, but not in gameplay, and that's the greatest flaw of Heroes.
Well, also, like a lot of the levels are kind of lazy in the sense that some of the levels, like Bullet Station, Egg Fleet, Final Fortress, repeat. Like you pretty much have to play through the same level twice in one level.
Ah, so you mean they repeat set pieces?
Yeah, essentially. So, like, in Bullet Station, you have to grind. Basically, you have to grind on a big rail to catch up to a train and destroy it, and then you jump out of that train onto a new set of grinds, a new set of rails that you have to grind to chase another train. It just gets quite monotonous after a while.
And I wouldn't have such a problem with Heroes if they had, and this is segueing into story here, if they had just given each team a different set of levels to play through. Not necessarily different levels entirely, but just switched up the order.
Well, that's what makes no freaking sense. Team Sonic clearly start in the desert, which you could argue is near Rail Canyon slash Bullet Station. Team Chaotix start off wherever the fuck they are, which is in a city. So you know they're in an office, which you would imagine to be in a city. So you can maybe make the case that they would be in Grand Metropolis. Team Rose starts off by like a beach, so Team Rose probably makes the most sense to start off in Seaside Hill or Seagate, of course, the tutorial level that Team Rose does. Team Dark starting off in Eggman's base. You could probably even make the case they would be near Eggfleet because it's just doesn't make. I wish they would have done what they in SA1, right? And to go back to that quickly, in SA1 has a total of 11 levels. No one character goes in every single level. Sonic goes through 10 of them. Tails and Knuckles have 5, I believe. Amy and Gamma have I think Amy has 4. I think Gamma has 5, and Big has 3 or 4. They should have done something like that for Sonic Heroes. Given each team, because there's 14. There's seven zones as it were, 14 levels. Give each team 5 or so. Give each team 5 or so because it would make it less monotonous. The fact that you have to play through the entire freaking game 4 times.
And your reward for playing through these levels in the same order 4 times through isn't even that good. You get a very lackluster story.
Well, see, it's not. See, just playing through the levels isn't enough. You also have to get the chaos emeralds. See, even thinking about this game is annoying.
And that's another point. The story was so throwaway. It's literally just Metal Sonic watches from the sidelines, and boom, at the last second, here's Metal Sonic, and he turns into a dragon.
Well, again, that was a conscious thing. They wanted to do a kind of throwaway story. To kind of go back to the Mega Drive games, not including 3 and K, but the stories in there were just an excuse to have Sonic run around and break shit. So, in that respect, for one game, I haven't got a massive problem with it. It's just, it is what it is. It's just, the gameplay is a massive letdown.
Definitely. Well, that's all I've got to say about Heroes. What's the next game on the list?
The next game would be Shadow the Hedgehog.
Oh boy, it's like they took the problems of Heroes and just magnified it, because now not only do you have to play through the game multiple times, you've got to play through it 10 times over.
Well, see, I don't necessarily agree. I can see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree with it. One, because I think, for my money, Shadow plays far better than Heroes does. I would gladly play Shadow over Heroes. I mean, yes, you do end up replaying a lot of them, the same levels, but the way it's designed, with the exception of a few levels, you can actually have 10 pretty different level progressions.
Here's a word of advice: don't try and complete it in one day like I did. You will bore yourself to tears. Because I didn't like the game. I found it boring. Colour-wise, it's so drab. It's like they thought, we have a game with a dark, brooding protagonist. Let's just mute the colour palette and make all the music so goddamn generic that people will want to cry.
Well, see, the weird thing about the graphics is that it's got really weird artistic clash, because, as Tom said, it's because of the character and the story nature of the game. There's a lot of blackness and darkness to the levels themselves, and the lighting and the design. But for some reason, they kept the model style of Heroes, so everything is super shiny, which clashes entirely with the aesthetics of the levels themselves.
And this is kind of where serious Sonic started to reach its magnificent climax, shall we say. You've got human characters, doing humanish things, like the president's in there and whatnot. You directly interact with him again, and it's too serious for its own good.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, to a certain extent, I will defend the gameplay, but the story. I mean, the fact that within in the opening cutscene within about 60 seconds for no good reason, aliens descend upon the Earth and start wrecking shit, is like the laziest of ways to open a story.
No, I suppose we should try and segregate the different complaints that we have with this game. So, gameplay. Weapons don't do anything. They add nothing to the story. You may as well just be using the homing attack.
I can agree with the point that they're not necessarily needed, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy using them.
You have not lived, though, until you've seen Shadow drive down the road in a Corvette and run over a gun soldier.
Exactly. Like I'm glad we live in this world where I can say I've seen that. For the similar reason why I'm glad that in just based on that, to quickly go on a very quick tangent about the game Sonic Battle. I once read the greatest. I once read the greatest reasoning as to why that game should exist. It was on the Sonic Stadium, and someone posted saying, "A game where I can kick the shit out of Cream as Shadow the Hedgehog, I'm in." And then underneath that, he said, "A game where I can kick the shit out of Shadow the Hedgehog as Cream, I'm in." Which just explains why Battle is amazing.
You know, I've got no problem with the side characters having their own games, you know, exploring, I'm kind of cringing saying this, but their own mythos. But it's sad that Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, not the character, actually the character too, exists as a punchline nowadays.
Yeah, well, it's Sega. Well, Sega clearly saw how popular it was. Well, that's the reason he was brought back, because Shadow had meant to stay dead at the end of SA2, but because they saw how popular the character was, they shoehorned him into Heroes, and then gave him his own game. So it's, well, in a recent poll, I forget the website, but of like the top 100 video game characters, not games, but characters of all time, Shadow the Hedgehog ranked at number 25.
That's disgusting.
Which is extremely impressive if you think about it.
And I'm sorry, maybe it's just because I'm getting on in years now, being the ancient age of 23 and all, but I can't fathom why people like Shadow so much. And you know what, I liked him at first, but I have to agree with certain people. He's the Poochie of the Sonic universe.
I'd say he used to be the Poochie. I think the one good thing about, well, in terms of story, I would argue that the one good thing about this game is that it finally gives him like it finally gives a resolution to his character.
Indeed, for it didn't need the overly serious tone. It didn't need aliens, for one thing. And you know what? Here's what I would have done to, save the story, seeing as I know so much about video game design. I would have taken Mephiles out of 06. I would have made him a prototype of Shadow, like another prototype of the Ultimate Life Form, and have him be activated.
So you would have had Mephiles as the prototype of the prototype.
No, one of the different prototypes. Like you have the Biolizard, and then you would have like the middle stage from Biolizard to Mephiles to Shadow, because there's a massive jump otherwise. And I think it would have just been much better if Shadow had someone on his level to fight, because in SA2 Sonic had Shadow to fight, and that rivalry was very natural. What's Shadow fighting against in his game? The entire world.
Well, see, I like where they ended up with his character. The way they get there is something I definitely would have changed. I mean, just the fact that Sonic Team has a really annoying habit of setting up a backstory for a character and then contradicting that in a future game. The rival series is the ultimate example. In Sonic Riders 1, the Babylon Rogues are claimed to be genies, but
I still laugh hearing this.
They claim to be descendant of genies.
Yeah.
I should say. Whereas
which makes sense because they're so in tuned with the sky and being able to fly, as it were.
Exactly. But then you get to its sequel, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, where they're aliens.
Oh my god!
Which either one, when you think either one, both backstories, they kind of stupid. But just pick one. don't like. The Shadow. It's what they did in that, because in SA2 he is, he's pretty much a science experiment from a mad professor, whereas in SA2, sorry, in Shadow, he's the alien. He's a mixture of like a science experiment, mixture of like he's the spawn of an alien god.
Oh,
Which
I hated that, to be
yeah,
honest.
my biggest problem was what they did to Gerald Robotnik, because I like the fact that, because it made sense for him to go insane, in SA2, because they gun murder his granddaughter.
Yeah.
So I get that, it's tragic, but it made sense for his character that he would just hate the world for that. But then you get the Shadow, and he's like, oh, actually, I like the world. Shadow, you're actually meant to save it. I know. I tried to blow it up with the Ark, but forget that, because that was 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm good now. It's
Yeah.
just.
But my biggest gripe with Shadow is the story. The same gameplay glitches from Heroes remain. The soundtrack.
I wouldn't
is,
say. I wouldn't say. I'd actually say it's slightly more polished than Heroes, which isn't. It's faint praise, but it's Shadow still isn't a perfect game. It's technically, I'd say it's worse than SA2, and but I would say it is slightly improved over Heroes.
I have nothing to say about the soundtrack. I find it completely forgettable. The one track I do like is the theme where he transforms into Super Shadow, because it contains a little sting from Live and Learn.
It contains Live and Learn and I Am All of Me. I like Shadow the Hedgehog is a game where Jun Chenoy returns as sound director, but he performs most of the track, as opposed in the previous games he would he would do like a big portion, but there'd still be a lot of other people doing it. In Shadow, he does like the majority of the tracks, and he himself has said he works best when he's surrounded by other people,
Yeah.
which is maybe I don't think Shadow is a terrible soundtrack, but it's really kind of like over the top. It's a more heavier sounding rock soundtrack than you used to. But all of that stuff was done too. Well, I guess Izuka has said that if you want to blame someone for Shadow, if you hate it, blame America. Because the game was designed to appeal more to America, because that's why it involves like aliens, and that's why it has shooting and swearing, and like the soundtrack is a lot. It's more edgy. It's more like metal, like heavy metal type of stuff.
Oh yeah, having them say "damn," which I don't consider a swear, but apparently it is in America.
In America, damn and hell are looked upon as more offensive than they are here.
It's so jarring, and it's really immature, actually. I find it kind of cringeworthy. Like, Espio's like, damn, damn,
Damn, we've been spotted. I will say though, as a kid, I loved it. Because it just comes out with some of like the most, like, where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald? I mean, it's so over the top. It's hilarious.
I mean, you could view it as a so bad it's good thing.
I mean, it's kind of what's that word they use for on TV tropes? It's nom. That's what it is, isn't it? What they say when something's like so lame it's funny.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, it's nom-tastic, because here are these characters. Oh, they don't. They only have characters. They don't have any of the children characters swear. Like Amy doesn't swear, Cream doesn't swear, Tails doesn't swear. I thought for years Sonic didn't swear, but he does.
Yeah.
In one mission, if you fail, he does.
And that's really all I have to say about Shadow. It's pointless self-indulgence, and it's a waste of a perfectly good scenario. But Gareth loves it, so there you go.
Yeah. Well, I love. No, in terms of the story, I think the gameplay has some merit to it, but in terms of there's a few scenes here and there. I won't lie. I love the ending where Shadow kills Eggman.
Now, what's the next game, Gareth?
Or in terms of main series canon, that would of course be Sonic the Hedgehog.
Please no, not again.
Like, is there really anything more we can say about this?
It sucks. Next. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well.
Please start us off, Gareth.
Okay. Okay then. '06 was a game that was advertised as the advertising was like "Welcome to the Sonic Age." Originally, it was meant to be like a reimagining of the series or kind of like a reboot.
Oh, was it ever?
Turned into neither. It's pretty. It's. I wouldn't be surprised if it's working. Well,
Surprise, cockfags! It's not
since
what you expected.
surprise cockback. Since SA2, most games have started off with the working title of Sonic Adventure 3. Sonic Heroes was called Sonic Adventure 3. Shadow the Hedgehog's original title was Sonic Adventure 3: Shadow of a Hedgehog. I wouldn't be surprised if '06 was actually meant to be Sonic Adventure 3 because it shares the most in common with SA1. Hub worlds are back. You're back to selecting characters who have interconnecting stories. The rumors go that it was coming along fairly well, but Microsoft said you have
no,
to
no,
have.
no, no, no. I've heard differently, and
Well, let me say what I heard, and then you can counteract with what you heard, because I don't think we have a definite response. But what has been said, and what some people believe is, Sega were working on the game, and Microsoft basically said to them, you have to have this game out by whenever it came out, otherwise you won't be allowed to sell games for our system anymore. Now that's what's been said. Whether that's true or not, I doubt unless someone from either end, which wouldn't happen, comes out and says so. That's just what's been said. But Tom, what have you heard?
now someone I follow on Tumblr said it wasn't Microsoft, and I forget what source he quoted, but he says it wasn't Microsoft at all who rushed them. I said there was like no one ever coming from Microsoft to tell them to rush. They said it was Sonic Team themselves wanting to rush the product into stores to meet, Christmas demand and whatnot.
Well, either way, whoever decided that is an idiot.
Yeah. And you know what? It's sad, because there's clearly potential there, and we've covered this so many times now. I'll give you an analogy. It's as if you took Sonic Adventure, held it up to a cracked mirror, and it only reflected certain qualities of it.
Well, see, it's the thing because there was so much people were looking forward to it from like early versions because just the amount of stuff that was meant to be included in it. Originally one of the things that I thought would have been most interesting was it was going to have a day and night system that would like the more time you spent in a level, like the time would change.
Yeah.
So like in early tech demos, they have like it's set in Kingdom Valley. They have Sonic just standing still for a while, and like the sun gradually rises and sets.
Oh, I love that, Jeff.
Exactly, which would have been. What I mean, they stuff like all those gems and stuff. Like what was it? They're gonna have the Rainbow Gem, which would have allowed Super Sonic to be playable in the things. There was like just it. If people can find enjoyment out of that game, good for them. I have no problem if you enjoy it. If you say it's your favorite Sonic game, that's fine. If you tell me it's not broken, I question your judgment. Because there's clearly issues with it. But if you can enjoy it, good for you. It's just for years, I think one of the biggest questions asked in the Sonic franchise is pretty much, how differently do you think '06 would have been received if it would have been finished? I reckon it would have been received better. It wouldn't get the hate it does. Even still, I don't think it would have been regarded as one of the best games.
I think it would have still been received exactly the same, because the problems go deeper than just the gameplay.
Well, see, no, I wouldn't go that extreme because the game is buggy as hell. I mean, like stuff like the story and stuff. People would still mock the story, and that's fine. But like, it wouldn't have been critically as hated. Well, the main reason people hate it is because of how terribly glitchy it is.
No, there's also the story, the load times.
Well, stuff like if it would have been fixed properly, I mean, like those would have been lessened. I mean, I myself, I don't play video games for story because
I'm sorry, but I'm just shaking my head here because it's like, and I'm not. You're a very smart person, but I don't think you realise how deep the rabbit hole goes here. If you fix the gameplay, you'd still have a story that is borderline bestiality. I don't care what anyone says.
We've all made jokes about that, but in all honesty, about the bestiality thing, to my oh 06 to this day, oh 06 is the most cinematic game in the franchise, regardless of whether you think the story's good. Just from what they tried to do, the scope of the story, how they staged cutscenes, the themes the game deals with, it's the most cinematic game in the franchise.
And I will argue that's not what a Sonic game is.
That's fine, but I'm talking specifically about the bestiality. I've I made jokes about it.
Isn't it?
Well, no, I'm not. Well, I've made jokes about it in the past, but I've never honestly seen it as bestiality. I saw it as a cinematic device. It just on a visual sense, the image of him being dead, and like her kissing him, and then the light appears and he's supersonic. They obviously did that to get to get a nice visual image.
That in and of itself is not so bad. It is the running relationship with Elise and Sonic. If you look at it carefully, it becomes very creepy. It's almost like Sonic is a nerdy teenager, and he's very awkward around his crush.
Well, it's that. Well, I've always seen that as being one-sided.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. It's one-sided. I think Elise likes Sonic, but Sonic is, apathetic about Elise.
I don't remember much from our 06 playthrough, but I do remember us specifically saying that, like, because we both apart from that one instance where he awkwardly laughs. Like, apart from that one instance, there's nothing he does which would even hint the fact that he loves her, or he's in love with her in any way, shape, or form. So like it's clearly one. If I think that's why it doesn't bother me. I think if they had written him as being in love with her, that'd be a different story.
If it was a simple case of rescuing a princess, I would have had no problem with that. But this game wants to be Final Fantasy. It wants to tell a story that, I'm sorry, but Sonic has no place in.
It does. Well, yeah. It goes to weird places involving like the amount of time travel they do. To me, it just raises massive plot holes in the franchise. Because I know at that point, to go back to Shadow for a second, and at that point in the franchise, Shadow has put his past behind him, a fact that we were all very grateful for. But I'm sorry, if you finally found out that all you need is a Chaos Emerald to travel through time, you think Shadow would go back 50 years to save Marie from getting killed? He's just.
Well, that's kind of like a straw man, really.
Yeah.
Let's argue this on the basis that it's set in its own continuity.
Yeah. Well, again, like.
It's hard discussing the flaws of this while being objective, isn't it?
Well, it's just certain. I can understand certain things they did, and I respect the decision to try and do certain things. It's a case where I think the intentions they had for what they wanted it to be were not what was not what they ended up with. Like I think certain things on a cinematic, they've clearly done things to kind of try and be cinematic, like the whole "don't cry" from a cinematic perspective. Something like that could work. Like it does. It raises kind of a nice image of this. This girl who has the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she can't show it, otherwise the whole world could end. Like it's not the worst idea I've ever heard. The problem in its execution is they set that in motion from the time when she's a small girl who both her parents have just died. That just doesn't make any sense, because if that was really the case, the whole world would have ended the second she woke up and realised her father had just died. Which if in the backstory you find out that that's was something that had just recently been put into her, it'd be much more believable and it would work better thematically in the story. And the whole time traveling aspect, like I don't have a massive problem with it, and just Mephiles, I think, works great. I think That's one thing. Most people who hate the story, most people maybe would say that Mephiles is at least a decent villain.
You know,
I think.
if you had taken out Elise, if you had taken out like Soreliana in general and just set it on an island somewhere, like a series of islands with Mephiles, I think that would have been fine. You could have had like Sonic CD2 or something.
Well, again, as you said, a lot of people have said they wish that like Shadow's section in the game would have been his own game. Obviously retweaked a bit, but like the basic concept of the villain, that's basically like an evil version, well, a recolor of a recolor, so to speak.
Oh my god, my head.
I know, had some potential, but see, I don't. Just certain things just don't really work. Again, like.
It's really hard being objective, isn't it? I've been through the same thing, and I'm sorry, I no longer have any sympathy for Sonic 06 whatsoever, and I have an issue. I'm going to choose to be offended here, not on a dramatic level, but I'm offended by the portion of the franchise, the fan base rather, that seems to view it as okay that these cartoonish characters need to run about in realistic settings and take part in the storylines that revolve around overly serious and quite RPG-ish styles. It's like, it's not needed, and it's almost as if you're playing the Sonic franchise for the wrong reasons. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I got into it because it was a bright and colourful series, and maybe I just can't understand the perspective of modern fans. But every time I see a comment saying how great the game is and how epic it is, epic especially, is the buzzword that sets me off.
I think the problem is Epic recently, especially thanks to the internet, with phrases like "epic win," Epic has taken on a different meaning as to what it originally entailed. In terms of, if you were going to the literal sense of the word epic, you could make the case that 06's story could be described as epic, as an epic, because of what happens in over the course of the game can be described as an epic storyline. But I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah. Well, in terms of the realism, to me, it kind of worked in SA1. Because that is the Sonic characters in a relatively realistic setting. But it just maybe it's because the human characters look like shit that they kind of fit in better, and also the fact that the levels, the hub worlds themselves were relatively kind of basic and human-like. The levels themselves were kind of more like classic Sonic levels. Whereas in 06, even the levels themselves are incredibly just realistic looking. But just as well.
So, if you ever see me on comments or whatnot, really going off on people who say, "Oh, this is the best game ever," you clearly don't know what you're talking about. I will tell you now, if you comment like that on any of our videos, I will tell you what I think of your opinion, and you'll find that is the only instance in the entire Sonic franchise when I will do that. If you said Sonic 3 and Knuckles isn't a good game, I would not give a shit.
Well, what do you rate, as of today, what do you rate 06 out of 10? Because when we first started doing the commentary, you gave it a 6. I remember this because you said it's not good. It wasn't an amazing game, but it wasn't as bad as a lot of people say it is.
Well, I've had a lot of time to replay it since then, over and over. And the more you play it, the more the flaws stand out. And as the current fans who enjoy the game now grow up, and I don't mean that in the maturity sense, I mean physically, age, you will go back to 06 and you will find yourself cringing at how you once thought the game was amazing. And trust me, it will happen, because it's happened to me with certain Sonic games before.
Well, yeah. Technically speaking, it probably should happen to us with SA1, but fuck you, I love that game. That game's amazing.
Give us another couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, give us 10 years, I'd be like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? That game's terrible.
Oh god, we spent so much time bitching about the story and me whining about the fan base that I forgot what we're meant to be segueing into next. Music.
Music. fantastic score. I mean, this was the first game, with the exception of some spin-offs like Sonic Shuffle and Sonic Riders, which was released the same year. That does not feature Jun Sonoy. Outside of playing some guitar parts here and there and performing some songs, he's not sound director. He does not compose any level music. This is the game that Tomio Otani was first sounding for. Otani first started off in SA2. He wrote the music for the Knuckle Raps. So the music behind like Pumpkin Hill was Tomio Otani, and he was sound director.
It's such a good soundtrack that '06 very nearly does not deserve it.
It's we just this is why I go back to when I say '06 is like the most cinematic game. I music plays a big part in that, because unlike this was the first SA1 had, for its cutscenes music, SA1 had a selection of stock themes like strain or happiness or sadness that it would just repeat, and same with character themes. SA2 had a bunch of cutscene, had some specific cutscene tracks, but there were no real themes, as it were. Heroes had like 4 bits of like soundtrack score, which only lasted like 10 seconds each or so. Shadow was the first game to have a few bits of themes that would be reprised in different cutscenes here and there. Most notably, the theme of the Black Arms gets played in a few different cutscenes here and there, but generally it's like the music it stands on its own a lot more. '06 was the first game really to kind of treat the story as a movie. So like over the course of '06, I was actually thinking about this today. '06 probably has the most themes that get reprised in the game in terms of the story mode. You have Sonic's theme, which is it's basically a instrumental version of His World. It gets played in his opening. It gets played like when he boards the battleship, when he confronts Eggman at the end. Shadow's theme, he in 2 different cutscenes, Shadow gets a very nice orchestral edition of All Hail Shadow. Ironically, Silver doesn't. His theme song, "Dreams of an Absolution," Silver doesn't actually get any kind of theme to get played in his story, which is kind of odd actually. This is the game that introduced us to the current Eggman theme. Yeah, which which is the theme. Hindered by, I'm probably pronouncing this horribly wrong, but Hindekai Kobasia was the man who does that. There's a theme called Tension, which plays in scenes like when Silver appears, when the Scepter of Darkness gets like destroyed, when Shadow and Silver start to fight. You have Mephiles' theme, which is amazing. The piano, which I love that. Like that to me is why that deserved its own game. Like take Mephiles and his theme and give him his own game. That's fantastic. And a few other things, which is and Elise's theme. Which, say what you will about the song, if you don't like the song, when Elise's theme gets used in certain cutscenes, it goes '06. With the exception of the introduction in Unleashed, '06 is one of the only games to have real instruments to be used for cutscene music. Sega, for levels, Sega is pretty good about hiring proper musicians to, so like nothing's fake, with the exception of a few tracks here and there. Mostly, if you think you're hearing a violin in a level, you are hearing a violin. For the cutscenes, generally you're not. But in '06, there are a handful of tracks where they use a real orchestra, particularly in Lost Story, reprising Elise's theme, and it's just fantastic. I mean, and so, I know I've been going on about music wire, but just like that, coupled with the certain camera shots and what they attempt to do in the story, is why, to me at least, '06 still remains. I mean, say what you mean. I tweeted this a while ago, Tom, and I think you even replied to it. But say what you will about story, but the very last cutscene at the end of Lost Story is fantastic. The animation, which that was before Sega had V Studio, so that was a company called Blur, which did cutscenes for '06, Shadow, and I believe Riders. It's Blur's fantastic animation with some incredible staging and an amazing piece of music that just, like, that. If that was a, like, it's, I'm sure it wasn't done on purpose, but it's a genius way to end the game because that ending is so good that momentarily it makes you like the game. Because that ending is just like that ending is just fantastic. I mean, technically speaking, it makes no sense as to why Sonic. Because when Solaris is wiped out, makes no reason as to why Sonic is actually in Soliana to begin with. So maybe you don't want to question it too much. But just on a visual standpoint, that ending cutscene is just amazing.
Now, we can't, talk about '06 without getting a bit more in depth with the gameplay. And you're right. You can talk about story, until the cows come home. But the real reason people hate '06 is the gameplay. It's not good. End of story. It's not finished. It's not finished. It's not programmed correctly. There are certain elements that are completely missing for no obvious reason, and it's a mess.
Pretty much. I mean, it's broken up into three different styles of gameplay. Sonic's gameplay is it's well, it tries to be Sonic gameplay from like SA1, but he's for some reason he's really slow. It is pretty much Sonic gameplay. It's just not very good Sonic gameplay. So there's not a lot you can say about. With of course the exception of the addition, I should say rather, of the mark speed sections, which in interesting idea. Like I can see why they put it in there. Horribly executed. Basically, as some of you probably know, they're sections where Sonic it kind of becomes secret rings for a little bit because Sonic is on rails running extremely fast. The only problem is in other levels. I mean, I would say the Mark Speed sections is probably based on the section in Speed Highway in SA1 where Sonic's running down the building. But the only problem is that everything can kill you. Being hit, running into like a box will basically make you lose rings, which doesn't make a lick of sense. That's horribly broken and glitchy. The jumping is atrocious, and in the Mark Speed sections, most times you will try and jump, and you just end up falling off a cliff. Just not very good design. Shadow pretty much it's pretty much basic Sonic gameplay. Only they really nerfed Shadow speed for some reason. Like he's ridiculously slow. He's been given some chaos powers, which for the first time in game, you can like fire like chaos spears and stuff, which is quite a neat addition. They retained the vehicle sections from Shadow. Some are mandatory, like the flying thing in I want to say Wave Ocean. Yeah, which is completely pointless and unnecessary. But in certain things, like in White Acropolis, you get to drive 4x4s and certain other things, which, I never understood, like, the vehicle stuff with Shadow, to be honest with you.
What I didn't care for is, I'm perfectly fine with it being three separate stories where you play as a different character. What I don't care for is when you forcibly switch me to a different character. And especially when you forcibly switch me to another main character.
Yeah, well, okay. Before I get to Silver, one of the, I guess, quote-unquote gimmicks is the use of Amigo characters. Technically speaking, there are 9 playable characters in the games. Sonic's Amigo characters are Tails and Knuckles, obviously. Shadow gets, of course, Rouge and Omega. And Silver is given Blaze the Cat and Amy Rose. In certain sections of certain levels, you will sometimes, for story reasons, you will cross over to a different character. Like in, say, Sonic's first level Wave Ocean, there's a section where Sonic's trying to subdue a whale, and while he's holding on to the whale, you take control as Tails as he tries to close the gate. Certain times, you have, and then later on in that story, Tails returns to Wave Ocean to look around. Nothing happens. And then there's certain sections where, like in Sonic Story, when you get the Kingdom Valley, you take control of Silver. Which is like, why? Doesn't. But then we get the Silver, which Silver was the story goes that independently of a Sonic game, they were developing this kind of like, Silver is he's basically power. He has mind control. He can like lift up shit and throw stuff with his mind. And originally they say they were going to make an original game based on that character, but then I think it's because Sega had just recently licensed the Havoc engine, which is like a real physics-based momentum physics engine thing. So like when if Silver picks up a box and drops it, the Havoc engine dictates that the box would fall and like bounce like realistically, as opposed to like instead of like Sega having to program that shit in, they can just use the Havoc engine and stuff. And so they basically tag Silver into this to well, I guess to not make their own game, and I guess to give a new type of gameplay, which I will say, just because based on how slow and broken Sonic and Shadow is, I actually prefer playing as Silver in '06.
It's interesting, but Jesus Christ, that ball rolling puzzle in Dusty Desert.
Yes, that is one of the
oh my god,
worst puzzles in a Sonic game ever.
And you know what? If I don't even understand, explain this for me, Gareth. Just explain why it's so bad.
Okay, essentially, there are these giant balls which they have numbers on them, which means you can only push them a certain amount of time. So you have to, before they disappear, so you have to get them down a long hallway into a specific hole within a certain amount of hits. Sounds like a pretty standard video game kind of like puzzle mechanic, which, but the problem is the hallway is so dickish in where it chooses to place like random pits, and because the gameplay was like Silver for me is the most fun to play out of all three of them, but he's still not perfect by any means. Like it's still extremely finicky. It's not a fun puzzle to do. It's really not. I mean, I did that drunk because I was at home playing. I was getting so annoyed. I just started like drinking, and so I was trying to do that or intoxicated, which was interesting to say the least. But it's just, well, to go back to Silver quickly, they actually say originally he started as a character called Venice the Mink, because Soliana, the main place where the story takes place, was obviously based on the city Venice. But for some reason they decided, no, let's make him a hedgehog, because that's what the franchise needs, more hedgehogs. They also say they went through 150 designs before they finalized Silver, and if that's what they came up with, I really don't want to see what the original 150 were.
I kind of like the idea of Venice, actually. You look pretty cool.
Yeah, well, like, I think artistically, Soliana is a nice design. It's just the hub worlds are just amazingly broken. They're so the slowdown in '06 is terrible.
I'm honestly getting depressed talking about '06. I don't get this with a lot of games, but people, you have to realise, even if you like this game, even if you don't find any flaws with it, even if you're willing to ignore the problems that are there is a reason people hate it so much. It's not a conspiracy. It's the reason why Sonic as a franchise almost became irrelevant.
Well, see, I don't get angry talking about it.
I don't. I get sad.
Yeah. Oh, '06 is just kind of weird to me. It's just, the fact that so many people love it. It's just, again, if you like it, that's
exactly
cool, good for you.
It's a game. It's a game that you enjoy.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are talking about, well, for one, a video game starring cartoon hedgehogs. If it really makes you get upset, you kind of need to, you kind of need to rethink your life a bit, which is,
if you get upset in an angry way. Mind you.
Yeah. Well, I can understand getting frustrated with the gameplay, because there's been times where especially during Radical Train, where I threw my PS3 controller down in anger because of how broken it is. But I never, once I stopped playing, I wouldn't be like laying in bed and going, "No, 6 is so bad, I can't take my life anymore."
You've got to understand, when you say you like it, it's a guilty pleasure because it's not a good game. You would never find me saying, Sonic 3D Flicky's Island is a great game because I love it. No, that's just not logical. Or say another pretty bad Sonic game, Sonic and the Secret Rings. I acknowledge that it's a terrible game, but I still like it. But I would never go up to someone and say, "Hey, why don't you try this? This is a great example of a Sonic game."
Unless I hated them, like Sky.
Yes, exactly.
Are we done with '06 now?
You think so?
Yeah.
Let's just move on.
Yeah, in terms of, well,
You know, oh 06 didn't give me a satisfying ending. I'm not going to segue satisfyingly from it either. Fuck oh 06.
well, oh 06 left such a bad taste in fans and critics alike that a lot of people were kind of, I wouldn't say looking forward to the next Sonic game, but a lot of fans were interested as to what Sega would do, because Sega had to, come out with something special to make up for '06, and the jury's still out. It's still pretty divided as to whether it did in its follow-up, which would be Sonic Unleashed, which came out 2 years later.
Lord, we're talking about polarizing. This is Shadow is a polarizing character. Unleashed is a polarizing game.
Yeah. During the development of '06, Sega started developing something called the Hedgehog engine, which was a lighting engine which would give realistic looking lighting. Basically, one of the directors at Sonic Team had made the astute observation that properly rendered cutscenes, to take the proper CGI cutscenes in '06. If you forget the obvious fact that the graphics are of a better quality, like the rendering is better than the in-game cutscenes, they look different, and that's mainly due to, well, animation and lighting. So they spent 3 years developing a lighting engine which would basically give the greatest level of lighting capabilities for like in-game graphics. And visually, Unleashed was a breath of fresh air.
Oh Jesus Christ! The cartoony style mixed with that lighting almost made it Pixar-like at times.
They read one of my problems with the franchise up to that point in the games was that for some reason Sega saw fit for every new game to give Sonic a redesign. He never looked the same in any two games. '06 gets a lot of criticism because, of course, he has gained the fan nickname of Longlegs because of obviously
Jesus!
how
They tried to make him more human-like, and that disgusts me.
well it's his proportions in '06 are extremely weird because his head is massive, his fingers and arms are just like insanely big. It's just it's weird. Well, at least they redesigned him, made him look slightly more classic, but not obviously not a proper classic. But Sega, I guess Sega was like, this is the design. So since Unleashed, he's had this design in every single game, which is something I'm proud, I'm glad of, because it got annoying seeing him get redesigned over and over and over again. This introduced the gameplay style of boosting, which I guess we should say that the gameplay is split into two different styles, daytime and nighttime, because of course in the story, Sonic gets endowed with it's never explained what it is. We're led to assume it's like negative Chaos Emerald power type of thing, and he gets turned into a werehog, which if you want to get technical, it doesn't make any sense because the obviously comes from the term werewolf, but the were suffix actually meant man. So Sonic turns into a manhog. Yeah. So the werehog basically is kind of like, I've never played it, but everyone says it's based on God of War. It's a beat 'em up, with some platforming and quick time events thrown in for a good mix. But daytime stages go back to a traditional Sonic. The levels themselves became a lot more constricted in terms of where you could go. It became a lot more just go forward. They would still have some branching paths to go like up. They'll still have like bottom, middle, and lower tiers, but there was no exploration. It was really just run forward and boost. And for that game, I thought it worked pretty well, especially coming out off of stuff like Heroes and Shadow and '06. Like the gameplay was for sure. It's hands down at that point it was the most polished game in the franchise, because in the daytime, if you die, 99.9% of the time it's going to be your fault. You know, the daytime stages. The reason why Unleashed is polarizing is because of the nighttime stages. A lot of people dislike the Werehog because it's not Sonic related. It's slow. You could argue that type of gameplay style doesn't really fit in a Sonic game. But Tom, what do you think?
Now, I really like Unleashed. I like the day stages more than the nighttime stages, don't get me wrong, but what I love about Unleashed is that it takes it back to the adventure style of gameplay. And I mean that like thematically, like you're going around a world basically on a journey. It plays kind of like a more enhanced version of Sonic Rush, and I just love it. Obviously, platforming is reserved for the optional levels more than it ever is in the normal day levels, but it's still very enjoyable. I like the Rush style of gameplay, but I can understand why people dislike it because it is very restrictive, and it's not until colours that they would start to like open it up a little bit and give players more freedom.
I mean, I don't hate. I enjoy Unleashed, but like, well, Unleashed is where the phrase that fans and haters of the series love to say, it's boost to win, which I would say for a lot of Unleashed, that kind of holds true. There's not a lot of platforming. Like occasionally, like certain sections, say Chunan, like you have to do some platforming, and Eggman Land. But for the most part, it is just kind of boosting and jumping and like dodging stuff here and there. It's just again, which at the time was a breath of fresh air. So, I had no problems with it back then. It's just after playing Colors and Generations, going back to Unleashed makes it look extremely basic.
Yeah, and it's good because it got slowly better and better.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of story, it's it, it's nowhere near as serious as '06 or Shadow, but it kind to me it kind of goes back to like SA1, where it's a serious story, but like it doesn't get like super serious.
It doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, like oh, Unleashed is one of the first games, along with say Secret Rings, where they put in running gags like Chip, want some chocolate. Professor Pickle always going on about sandwiches and stuff. It's just like it's the writing got it kind of the writing improved greatly. Like the story is pretty simple. The story is pretty much just Sonic has to restore the Chaos Emeralds and defeat Eggman. That's it. It's nice and simple, but it's kind of like I enjoy it because while it's simple, it's told effectively. Like there's some nice scenes. Like there's one scene in particular which a lot of fans like to point out, where it shows a side of Sonic's character we've never seen before. The section where, as the Werehog, he runs into Amy, and for the first time, Amy doesn't recognize him, and that kind of upsets him. It's like it doesn't last long. He's not depressed for like the whole game, but it's just nice to see that kind of affects Sonic in a way.
And I think the biggest thing about the story in Unleashed, it's about discovery, really, and this is on their chip site, and it's a lot. It's a really weird criticism that I've seen mostly from NeoGaf, is that they said they starved the writers because food plays a massive role, at least in like some optional side things for Chip. Because if you feed him food, you'll get a different reaction, and if you give him enough of the ice cream sundaes, you'll get an achievement. And the way I saw it is, food is a metaphor for new experiences, and Chip was unfamiliar with the world, so the more he ate, the more he discovered about the world, which is kind of, when you first find out that he is, I'm not going to say what he is, when you first find out who Chip really is, he says as much. It's been so fun getting to see all the new places and so on, and that's how I read into it.
Well, I just saw it as the writers not taking themselves too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, when Robotnik orders and like bites down a Subway sandwich in 3 bites, it's not really a story that's taking itself all that seriously.
Well, I mean, like it is weird that there's so many different scenes about food. I mean, you have Chip constantly talking about like the scene with the ice cream sundae. He's always offering people chocolate. Professor Pickle's introduction, which is fantastic. Him talking about like the right way to make a cucumber sandwich. There's Eggman. Eggman must be like Subway's #1 customer because like he's like the biggest sub in the world. And there's just lots of really nice little gags like that. But again, there's not. I didn't mind the Werehog. I kind of thought that. I thought that the Werehog as a character and his like fighting. This is mainly the HD version because the combat in the HD version is more advanced than it is in the Wii version. The way he plays is fine. I just felt that his levels weren't as good as they could have been because in the build up to it, Sega was like, in the daytime stages, we're going to give you insane speed, the likes of which you've never seen before, which they did, But they also said, and then with the Werehog, we're going to give you some like really old school platforming sections,
and that's
like
what,
level
that's
stages.
what I was looking forward to. I think what I would have preferred if the Werehog was basically classic Sonic. If he was like, I expected him to be like rolling up into a ball, like rolling down slopes, bouncing off walls, like Prince of Persia, like swinging on rooftops, which he does, but it's kind of like padded out with having to kill enemies.
I mean, like, there are some nice platforming sections here and there, but they are buried under monotonous. Go into a room, defeat X amount of enemies. Go into another room, defeat X amount of enemies to proceed. I mean, I've said this before, and other people have said it as well. But if the Werehog would have been Knuckles, less people would have complained.
I don't think so because the stages would have still been as boring.
Well, they still would have been a bug, but a lot of people take issue with the whole notion of the Werehog. Like forget the gameplay. Just some people hate the character of the Werehog. If the story would have been different and it would have been like say Sonic and Knuckles 2, I'm not saying that like as a whole like people would have like loved it like amazingly, but I just feel that people would have responded more to the fact that Knuckles was like a main character again. As opposed to the Werehog, but I like Unleashed. To quickly go on the topic of the Wii version, as I've said before, I don't think one version in particular is 100% better. I think if they would have taken bits and pieces from both, then you would have the best version of it because certain levels are better in the different versions. Certain parts of them are better in the
I really
different
dig
versions.
the section in the Wii version of Cool Edge Day at the beginning when you're on the toboggan and all the icicles fall down and you're like going in between them.
I would say Cool Edge Day on the Wii version. I would say is better than the HD version because there's a lot more platforming in that one. Like visually speaking, of course the HD version looks better because you spend more time in the open in the HD version. In the Wii version, you kind of go into the caves of Alaska, but there's a lot more like platform in there. Of course, HD version has more levels. Wii version, has fewer levels, has more Werehog levels, but there's no meadow hunting, which was I thought was a big plus.
It was a method to pad out the game. Let's be honest.
But that's why the Werehog. That's what that makes sense to me because Sonic Team have admitted that's why the Werehog's there, to pad out the game. So why they felt a need to pad out even more is beyond me.
Well, they kind of learned their lesson.
The Wii version has that, but the padding is only for extra levels. You don't need to do any of that to play like the main like levels themselves. But well,
what's your opinion on the soundtrack?
I like it. I love the fact that they hired an orchestra, even though it wasn't for everything. They hired the Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra to perform the orchestral theme, the World Adventure. They hired them to do like the main menu music, like boss, like when you complete a level, game over music. They had them record the opening cutscene, which is 6 minutes of just musical brilliance. I like it. I mean, it's got some nice tracks here and there. I don't think it wouldn't crack my top 5 soundtracks. I say, I mean, it has some interesting stuff. I mean, Tomio Otani returns as sound director. In terms of like level music's fine. I mean, like it's. I was hoping for more of. I was hoping that each world would have a theme, and that like each. So like say, Empire City. I was hoping Empire City would have one theme, and then you'd have 4 different remixes of it. Because like the hub worlds don't sound the same as the levels, and like the day and nights don't sound the same either. So I was kind of like, which is fine. I was just kind of hoping that like say when we get the colors, I wish they would have done what colors did with their worlds in Unleashed. Well, like they have if you're gonna say like go to a tropical resort, there's 3 different remixes of the same tune in the different levels. So like I wish like they would have had like slight remixes, but some of the tracks in there, like Rooftop Run, everyone loves Rooftop Run. Like I haven't met anyone who doesn't love like not so much the level, but the music. Everyone loves the track of Rooftop Run because it's just fantastic.
So, what I would have done, well, we haven't even discussed the story here.
We did slightly.
Ah, okay, well, I'll round up my thoughts then, because we're pushing, like, what is it? 2 hours, 20 minutes? Jesus Christ. Unleashed, it's one half good game, one half average. I wouldn't say mediocre, I would say average. If you had taken out the beat-em-up gameplay and focused more on, like, heavy platforming and fixed up the mechanics of the Werehog a little bit, I think it would have been much more well received. But the Werehog stages are very monotonous, and that drags down the thing as a whole.
I mean, yeah. Well, I wasn't as adverse to the Werehog as some people were. I mean, obviously, it is the weaker aspect of the game, but you know, I think for what it set out to do was to show people that as a franchise, Sonic wasn't dead, and to bring some life back to the franchise. I think it did its job. It did its job.
It was a breath of fresh air playing it, I'm not gonna lie.
It was. I mean, and it was the best, probably the best game, the best main series game in the franchise for about 5 years. At that point.
I mean, there were still problems left over from 06. You could very clearly see it. The way Sonic moved, certain mannerisms from the characters and whatnot. But it was very clear that they were making a positive change in the series.
Oh yeah, hands down.
And at this point, I actually don't want to cover Colours and Generations right now because those 2 playthroughs are ongoing. So I'll just say, it's been 4 years since we started HellfireComms, and even longer since we actually started doing Sonic playthroughs. And for all of you who have stuck with us for that long, and indeed for all of you who have stuck with us for this particular podcast, thank you so much for sitting through our rambling bullshit and supporting us the way you have. There literally would not be a HellfireComms or FTCR without you guys.
Exactly. And if this proves, because I know before we did this, we were gonna try and do every game in the franchise, but let's not do that now because it's getting late. But if this proves popular, then I'm sure we can come back and do a sequel to this about the spin-offs, like the storybook series and like the Writers games and the Rust and Advances.
So from me, NTom64.
And from me, FTA.
I will see you all on Sonic Colours and Sonic Generations. See you then.
Goodbye.